Alright folks, you wanted my video on the Micaiah Bryant shooting, so here it is. Now I am using a video posted by Police Activity, which is linked in the description, and I encourage you to watch it first and then come back to this one. And I know that I'm a little late on this. I was on the other side of the state doing some work, so I didn't have access to all my stuff. So it's coming out a few days later than everyone else's video, but I think there's information in here that other people have not necessarily touched on. Additionally, since I wrote this script, I haven't noticed anything, incredible come out about this, so I haven't added anything new. But since I wrote this script and after posting this video, information might come out that contradicts what I'm putting in this video today. So if that happens, feel free to let me know. Keep me updated because I might not notice. Do it in the comment section. Please be reasonable, be polite, etc., etc. There you go. Let's start with a 911 call. Now, not much information is given, but it's clear a fight is happening. The caller says there are girls here trying to stab us. Micaiah's mother says Micaiah was the one who made that phone call, but as of yet, I haven't seen evidence to confirm that other than the mother's statement. So I have some doubts, but I can't say for certain, who actually made the call. Police arrive to a heated argument. While one officer asks what's going on, a girl, later identified by family members as Micaiah Bryant, suddenly rushes at another female, swinging a hand holding a knife at the girl's head, and knocks her to the ground. It is worth noting that the girl who ended up on the ground did not appear to have been an imminent threat to Micaiah's safety, and was, in fact, backing up. Now, I know Donut Operator has said in his video that he slowed down the video and saw that the knife actually made contact with the girl, and that seems likely. I have not confirmed that, so it is a possibility. Do keep that in mind that the other girl was slashed at some, part of her upper body. The officer attempts to get Micaiah's attention and orders her to the ground. Micaiah, instead of doing that, changes directions, runs past the girl on the ground, and charges at a second girl. She pins the girl against the car and pulls back her hand holding the knife. Now, there's no doubt in my mind, based on her previous assault on the girl on the ground, that Micaiah intends to use that knife in a potentially lethal fashion, and I imagine the officer felt the same way. He fired 4 shots, stopping the threat to the second girl's life, at which point officers immediately began to initiate first aid, which is excellent. That's exactly what they should be doing. Honestly, this isn't really a complicated situation, but some people are trying real hard to make it one. We'll start with the officer's lawful ability to use deadly force in this situation. An officer can use deadly force to protect their own life or the life of another, as long as it is reasonable to believe that failure to do so will result in imminent, grievous bodily harm or death to themselves or others. This was also confirmed by the press conference given the night of this incident, which I encourage you to watch. There is some good information there. There's a lot that we can't talk about that yet, but I think they put out information that is good to know, if relatively vague. So we can determine that lethal force was not only an option, but a lawfully available option. But was it the right option? To cover that, let's look at the Use of Force Continuum. For those of you who don't know the Force Continuum, it's a list of applicable force techniques that can be used by officers in the appropriate situations, from the lowest amount of force, which would be officer's presence, to the most amount of force, which is lethal force. In an encounter with civilians, an officer is expected to start as low as is reasonable and progress up this scale until their lawful goal is accomplished. At any point, I can meet or slightly exceed the force used against me without needing to escalate through every available force technique. For example, I'm not going to have to try verbal commands and then OC spray and then a baton and go through all the steps in order if someone's actively drawing a gun on me. Even if I didn't start at, oh my God, he's drawing a gun. It was just a normal conversation. I started at officer's presence, right? And then, pa-pa, they have a gun. I don't need to go, oh my God, I need to go through every step. Like, oh, no, not OC spray, not baton. No, I'm going to jump to also lethal force. See, at any point I can meet or slightly exceed the force used against me without needing to escalate through every other available force technique. The officer did start at officer's presence, the lowest use of force. He arrived on scene and asked what was happening. He quickly moved on to the next step, which is verbal commands, when the assault happened. Upon recognizing the knife in Micaiah's hand, he immediately jumped to presentation lethal force and then use of lethal force. As I already explained, this is authorized. But could he have had success with a lesser use of force? Well, let's start with empty hand techniques, which would manifest as the officer physically restraining Micaiah. It's a great idea, except she was holding a knife, so the officer's not going to go near her because, deadly weapon. And we can sit here and argue all day about what kind of training officers should have to disarm people wielding knives in a 100% effective manner. And we can, trade videos about, well, this officer did it. And I can be like, well, this officer didn't. He got stabbed, etc. We could do that all day. But we're not going to. We don't have to. You see, if we look at the sidewalk in the video, we can assume that the officer's probably about 20 feet away based on the average size of those sidewalk blocks. And it takes about 1.5 seconds to cross 20 feet at a full sprint. Now, how long do you think it would have taken Mackay to stab that girl? I would personally hazard a guess that's less than 1.5 seconds. In fact, let's find out how many times I can complete a stabbing motion in 1.5 seconds. Now, I wasn't just swinging my arm. I was actually using some real force in that and not taking into account my level of fitness versus hers, or the resistance the knife would encounter when entering a body, or the length of her arm versus mine, or anything else. That's more times than I would like to be stabbed. It's certainly enough to kill someone, especially with that knife. And let's talk about that knife. It appears to be some sort of steak knife, which is traditionally a knife with a blade greater or equal to 4 inches. 4 inches is generally the distance that it takes a knife to penetrate a human body to cause serious damage to internal organs, which is why in some places in the United States, it is illegal to conceal a knife in public that exceeds 4 inches in length. Now, that law depends on what part of the United States you're in, but throughout the United States, 4 inches is probably going to be enough to kill you. So we can conclude that that weapon is long enough to be lethal, and it's almost certainly sharp enough to pierce a person, although, technically I could accomplish this with a tent stake and enough force. And that knife is being wielded in a manner that indicates intent to cause serious or fatal harm. I know a lot of people are saying, but she was just a kid. She was 16 and fully physically capable of killing someone with a knife. Younger girls than her have accomplished it. She was also old enough to understand that stabbing someone is bad. If we can trust 16-year-olds to, operate a motor vehicle, I feel like we should understand that they know that killing people is wrong, right? If they are mentally capable of controlling 2 tons of metal, I see no reason why this should be an issue of age, physically or mentally. But I'm going on a tangent, so let's get back to the Force Continuum. After empty-hand control would be a taser, something a lot of people have been wondering about, but a taser's effectiveness drops significantly from farther than 10 feet away. You have 2 different parts of a person's body that you're aiming at simultaneously to accomplish a double hemisphere connection on a moving target, and you have at most 2 shots before you need to reload. And if you miss, or the prong doesn't penetrate through clothing, or maybe they're on drugs, and I'm not saying that was a factor here, but it is something that you have to consider, then you're wasting critical seconds. Critical seconds that a girl is spending stabbing another girl. A taser is something you use when lethal force, such as a knife, is not in play. Or, if it is in play, you make sure that someone else is covering you with lethal force while you prepare less lethal force, to include, pepper ball, beanbag rounds, all that good stuff. Shockingly, pun, when a taser is unsuccessfully deployed, it actually can cause a person to become more aggressive. They may come to the realization that their time to accomplish the goal is running out and, increase whatever they're doing, whether it's speed or intensity, or they may get angry at you, the person deploying the taser, and come at you. Now, in this case, that's not going to be that big of an issue because it does distract the girl from the other girl. But that's a big if. Like, is it going to do anything to her mentally? Is it going to cause her to stab that girl with more ferocity? Is she going to come at me? A lot of ifs. Taser is a big if in this situation. It's such a big if that I'm not even going to consider it seriously. Next, we have OC spray, which is also ineffective at that distance. Then we have a baton, which is ineffective at that distance. Then we have a police dog, which was not available and would have had the same issue with distance. And finally, we have presentation and use of force. So remember when I said an officer can skip steps? That's what happened here, because guess what? None of the other options were good options. So we're back at use of deadly force, and the question has been asked, why didn't the officer shoot warning shots? Warning shots? To my knowledge, no department in the United States is authorized to use warning shots. That's absolutely unacceptable. If you're going to pull out your gun and pull the trigger, there's only one reason to do that, and that's because someone is threatening someone else's life. And that threat is imminent. You don't do warning shots. Why didn't the officer shoot her in the leg? because that's a really small target and there's no guarantee that it would stop the stabbing. This isn't Hollywood. A single shot often fails to bring someone down immediately. Thanks, adrenaline. Plus, now you have to worry about the possibility of bullets ricocheting off the street and into a house somewhere. Why didn't they shoot the knife out of her hand? Same reason. Small moving target, and now there's a bullet traveling through the neighborhood at an even higher velocity than a ricochet. And when should the officers have shot the knife? Here, when it was in front of the girl in pink, or maybe here, when it was in front of the girl in pink, or what about here, where it's only incredibly close to being in front of the girl in pink, when the smallest mistake would put a bullet through the person being attacked? Why don't they have the training to make those shots? Excuse me? To have that sort of skill, which is a perishable skill, you would need to train daily and expend tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of rounds of ammunition. Sorry guys, we didn't have enough money to learn how to de-escalate, but the good news is our officers are really good at shooting now. Yeah, how do you think that's going to look? Probably not great, right? Not really something you could argue very well. But it was the girl that was shot who called the police. Well, I'm still waiting to confirm that, and even if that was true, when the police arrived, Micaiah was attacking two people with a deadly weapon in a manner not consistent with self-defense. She was at that point the aggressor. She was not at that point acting in self-defense. And when police were called, they got a call of someone is stabbing someone else. There's no way for them to know what the situation was because Micaiah didn't give them enough time to figure it out. Why didn't the officer de-escalate? What, in the 4 seconds he was there? Was there some magic word he should have said other than get on the ground that would have put Micaiah in a hypnotic trance? De-escalation doesn't work that way. Why didn't the civilians try to de-escalate before the officers arrived? Why are they blameless here? Especially this guy. What was that? You have a grown man kicking a child in the head, but it's the police who are wrong. Folks, de-escalation is difficult. It's difficult one-on-one, and it's nearly impossible with a group. And while there are techniques that may have been effective here, there wasn't time to try them. But if those girls had attacked Micaiah before the police arrived, can't she attack back? No, for the same reason an officer can't shoot a person running away who is no longer a threat to anyone. And I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but it shouldn't happen, right? If you're going to be mad at police shooting people who are running away, which you should be, you should also be mad at a girl stabbing another girl who is backing up. We don't know that the knife would have been fatal. Similarly, we don't know if a bullet wound is going to be fatal. Do I really have to make that counter argument, or are we going to recognize that's a stupid argument to have? A knife is very deadly. A bullet is also very deadly, but from a distance. What else have people been saying? Oh, don't bring a gun to a knife fight. Why not? The actual phrase, by the way, is don't bring a knife to a gunfight. The idea being that it would be stupid to put yourself in such an obvious disadvantage. Is the officer supposed to also pull out a knife and start dueling with Micaiah after she's done stabbing the girl? No, that's stupid. And let's not forget this tweet. Teenagers have been having fights, including fights involving knives, for eons. We do not need police to address these situations by showing up to the scene and using a weapon against one of the teenagers. Y'all need help. Oh yeah, no, that's a great idea. Just let Micaiah kill a bunch of other girls instead while, police watch. Great, yeah. No, ladies and gentlemen, no. People have been poisoning each other since the dawn of time. You made a conscious decision to put food into your body. That's not our business. You should have checked if someone had poisoned it. In fact, if you had any real friends, they would have tested it for you. What's that? DUI? Sir, alcohol is ancient, and cars have been around for over 100 years. Get with the times. There's nothing we can do. Ma'am, calm down and open a history book. People have been chained up in dungeons since dungeons. And I hardly need to remind you how long those have been around. Basements are pretty much the same thing, so it's not my business if your child has been abducted. Doesn't really make sense, does it? Doesn't check out. And first, by the way, an eon is a billion years. In case you were curious, I checked, figured I'd put it in here in case anyone else wanted to know. Second, if you want a super secret knife fight, don't call the police to it. Third, if that police officer hadn't acted, he would have met the elements of dereliction of duty, which is a misdemeanor in the second degree in Ohio. And fourth, can you imagine the outrage if he had just let it happen? Get real. Come on. And speaking of tweets, check this one out. LeBron later took that one down and posted this tweet. I took the tweet down because it's being used to create more hate. I am so desperate for more accountability. Hi, LeBron James. Sit down. I respect what you've accomplished, but I don't come onto your court and tell you how basketball is played. Why are we blaming the officer for saving a life? Or lives, in fact. Because the attacker was black? Well, so were the victims. Does that give her a right to kill her skin color? No. Is it because the officer didn't use less lethal options? Well, we've already explained that, LeBron. This comes back to you maybe not knowing what you're talking about. Is it because she was a kid? Well, so was the girl she knocked to the ground and maybe cut, and then so was the one she was attempting to stab. So if we want accountability in this particular situation, is it really fair to go after the police officer? I personally think we need to address why this girl felt the need to use a knife. Where was the failure in the community to stop this situation from developing? Folks, I know I'm being flippant, and there are some jokes in here and all that. Don't think I don't realize how horrible this is, that someone died, that a family, lost a daughter, that friends will no longer, meet up in the same group. I wish this hadn't happened. I really do. But it did. And we can't change that. Now, there are issues regarding policing in this country. This is not one of them. Focus your energy and outrage on the real issues. Use those real issues to reform the police, if that's what you're trying to do. I am for police reform. I'm for police accountability. But I also will not hesitate to call people out for using stupid arguments or dumb examples to try to accomplish that. Anyway, that's all I got. So until the next time, be good, stay safe.